Welcome to another episode of TXCPA Houston Virtual Rolodex. I am Kristie. I have the privilege of being the hostess for this awesome podcast. And if you're seeing this on YouTube, on the video, today I have, as you can see, two special guests. So I am going to let each one of them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves and their position at Harness Wealth. Lena, I'll let you go first.
Awesome. I'm Lena Allouche. I along with Nick lead business development for the organization. I spent almost a decade in financial planning and financial services before recognizing the extreme need that advisors across the board, so tax advisors, wealth managers, trust and estate planning attorneys need support for their practices. And that is when I found Harness. And I have been super fortunate to work with so many tax advisors across the country in helping them create capacity and enrich their practices.
And Nick, yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Nick Hampson. I'm the head of business development at Harness Wealth, and I joined Harness after 7 years at Compass, which is a real estate technology company. There I had led growth across the center of the country and been with them. Started with them when they were a small 150 person company out of New York, and it grew over the 7 years I was there to a Fortune 500 company, went public, all across the country by the time I left, and had a wonderful time there. One of the happy circumstances that I found myself in was that the COO and CFO of Compass while I was there was a gentleman named David Snyder, who became the CEO and founder of Harness Wealth. So when I started peeking my head up a little bit and started chatting with David about his experience starting this company and who he was looking to serve and how he was hoping to grow, it really resonated with me, and I came on board to hopefully, really help us impact some independent, in this case, independent tax practices with what we bring to the market, and also some really good consumer benefits that we're working on as well. So that's a little bit of my background.
Well, you gave just a little hint of Harness Wealth. So whichever wants to do it, tell us like the 30-second elevator pitch of what is Harness Wealth and why, of course, virtual Rolodex, why should they be in the CPA's virtual Rolodex along with the community's virtual Rolodex?
Absolutely.
Whichever one.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. I think I'll start off, and Lena, obviously hop in with anything that I don't cover within there. But especially for this audience, I think Harness is a software and services platform for independent tax practices that helps them create capacity and enrich their practices, right? That's really who we're looking to serve with the software that we've developed, and then the customer service and concierge service that we bring to those folks. So that's really, if we're boiling it down and saying exactly why we're here today and why we're talking to you, I'd say that's the headline, kind of the sub-headline or the other side of the company that really led to what we're doing now. Is when we're thinking about the consumers, so the broader public, what we're actually trying to create for them is what I would describe as a digital family office, right? So what I mean by that was when David Snyder, who I mentioned earlier, left Compass, he noticed that there were a lot of folks who were newly stepping into wealth, either by founding a company or by investing in a company or having early stage equity at a company that was becoming worth more. And when they were coming up to these big moments in their financial lives, they kind of were at a loss on who to work with for the tax side of things, or the financial planning, or wealth management, or trust and estate now if they're growing a family, right? So what he saw was there's an opportunity here for a lot of these folks who are digital native, right? They're going to be folks who are searching online for that, but to create a consolidated place, Harness Wealth in this case, where they can find hand-picked advisors in each of those disciplines that they can be then connected with. Now, of course, that provides a cohesive and elevated experience for the consumer. It also allows those advisors to communicate with each other and to be able to serve the client better that way. And that was really kind of the initial idea, actually, was, hey, how can we build that out? So we started there, and what was kind of interesting, this will be no surprise to you and no surprise to any of your listeners, I think, that once we started building there, about 85% of these consumers, these clients that were coming to us, needed tax support almost first and foremost, right? Especially if you have independent or incentive stock options or RSUs that are coming, coming into being fully vested and trying to figure out what the tax implications are. That was the first thing that a lot of those folks really needed help with. And we were working with some wonderful tax advisors, but again, no surprise, at a certain point, they started saying, hey, we're at capacity. This is a little too much, right? Like we love these clients, this is great, but this is, we just don't have the hours in the day to be able to serve all these folks, especially, during busy season and when a lot of these decisions come up. So as we heard that was where the product and engineering team, as well as our client success team, we said there's an opportunity to pivot them here and to start delivering a service to these tax advisors that helps solve that core issue that there's not enough capacity in the industry, right? How do we build technology that makes running a practice more efficient, that makes the client experience one that's more transparent and kind of reduces some of those questions, some of those outreaches from the client in the busiest time of year? How can we build something that creates capacity for those folks so that all these wonderful clients that we have coming in have advisors to work with on the tax side of things and can start there, and then of course continue their journey into financial planning or wealth management or trust and estate when it's right for them, right? That they can start moving into some of those things, but you got to start with tax first in so many ways. So a little bit longer than 30 seconds, but I hope that gives you a good idea of kind of how we got to this point and the two different sides of the company in that way.
Well, I love it because one of the things that I'm always mentioning to small business owners, to entrepreneurs and everyone out there, I'm like, you got to have a team. And to put that team together, a lot of times we go to the CPA and we're like, well, who do you want? Who do you work well with for the investment side? Trust lawyer, And so the CPA is like, okay, well, here's my Rolodex. And hence the reason for this show is because I was getting a lot of those questions myself. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start interviewing people so people can learn more about you guys and others. So I love that because we do need a team when we are building that wealth, when we are looking at, oh, I am in corporate America now, but I'm going to go out on my own. What does that look like? Because your tax status changes dramatically, and so loving how this platform is working. Lena, what did you want to
add? And what we found just along the community aspect and the team aspect is that these tax advisors that were raising their hand saying, I'm happy to take on these clients. I also need to, create some space in my practice. We're saying, I also still need that community of other tax advisors around me and other people to not just commiserate, but also bounce ideas off of. And, maybe you come across a situation that's not really your area of expertise. You still need to pick the brain of somebody else. And so what we've developed to help enrich advisors' practices and create more value in their practice is a huge community of tax advisors, a weekly coaching session where they're all sitting around the table talking through, how do I price my services? How do I establish my value proposition? How do I do all of these things? And the community really helps them. Along those, similar lines, we have an advisory council as well that's made up of attorneys from different disciplines that you can, just ping them and say, hey, can I get 15 minutes? I have this, international client and I really need to chat through some things and want to make sure, all is kosher before I move forward. And so we've really found that having that, that group, that community, that team that you were talking about has really been able to create value for our advisors' practices. That plus the client introductions that Nick was sharing earlier, we found that the advisor and their clients now have a better relationship. It's not just transactional anymore. They're not just saying, I'm doing your taxes and that's really it. It's a true relationship that's built on planning, of course the tax work, but more trust there because of the partnerships with those, attorneys, wealth managers, advisory council all across the board. And as a result, what we've seen is stickier clients, more referrals that come from those clients because, as they're sitting around the Christmas table, they're like, yeah, no one wants to talk about, taxes at Thanksgiving, but it often comes up or the holidays. And they're like, oh, you should talk to my, my advisor. And it's also been able to help a lot of our tax advisors increase their fees because they were able to bring so much more value to their clients, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes great sense. And I love it, especially about building the relationships and working as a team, because your client, or a lot of times the client's coming to the CPA, to the tax advisor, and has this preconceived notion that this person knows it all. And the CPA tax advisor has to say, I am sorry, I do not. But what you were talking about seems like masterminds, peer groups, which we're also kind of starting, we are starting at TXCPA Houston for different disciplines. And so having that way of bouncing off those tough issues, like I know franchise taxes in Texas got easier, but what about that? What does that really mean for our businesses with these new law changes? As we go into after the elections, more than likely going to have law changes. Small businesses are going to be like overwhelmed anyway. They're like, I don't know what to do. So having these masterminds that you're talking about and be able to be more strategic in planning is what it sounds like that value proposition to the clients is. And for the tax advisor, like, I don't have to be on my own. Sometimes I feel like we're on our own little island. And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, Harness Wealth brings those islands together as a community. And so it's more united and more functional for the community, the public, the clients.
Make a little tax archipelago, you know what I mean? Get all those, get all those
Here,
advisors.
I'm going to help you with your marketing and your branding. It's going to be a little island, a little group of islands coming together.
Of course.
I love
I think you keep using the word team, and I think it's such a good word for, I think, how we're approaching this and how we're thinking about it. It's about, I think, playing people into positions to succeed and what they do best, right? If that's a tax advisor, I think, we've spoken to hundreds, if not thousands of tax advisors at this point. I think consistently what I hear from those folks when I chat with them is that they got into the industry to help people because they like solving problems, and they realize that the problems they like solving, a lot of other people have and don't have the time or expertise to be able to solve for themselves, right? What I don't typically hear is that I got into this to do taxes with some folks, but really it's to build out my whole tech stack for how I do the taxes, or it's to answer questions about, did I get that document that you uploaded, and like run base level IT, or, figure out which, negotiate with contractors for, which service is going to be best to support their practice. It's like, the core of what they want to do is solving problems for their clients. And I think where we see our kind of adding value to that is taking care of those other things, right? It's like we've pulled together everything you need to have your client hop into a client portal and upload their documents, sign their engagement letter, pay an invoice, and for you to track, or for the CPA to track billing on their side of things, and to track all the different engagements that they have going on at one time. It's like we've built that or worked with other third parties to kind of integrate into what we're doing, so that we're running research and development, we're negotiating with those third-party technology companies, we're evaluating what's coming up, and seeing if there's a way to do it better, so that the advisor can focus on what they do best, which is actually advising that client and having that sort of a planning relationship, or of course walking them through the complexities of compliance each year. Like, that's where I think everyone is kind of at their highest and best use in many ways, right?
Yeah, the back office stuff is never fun.
Oh, exactly.
Website development, marketing, all that is like, it's necessary,
Right.
but it's one of
do without
those.
it, it'd be all right. Right.
And one of the themes we're hearing just across the board is that tax advisors, CPAs at these really big firms are like, you know what? I think it might be time for me to go out and start my own thing. But they've got this little voice in the back of their head that says, How am I
Mhm.
going to structure my firm? What's my technology going to look like? Where am I going to get my first clients? How am I going to sustain my practice? How, who am I going to bounce ideas off of once I leave this huge firm? And so what we've done is really create like build your business in a box, for lack of a better term, build your tax practice kind of out of the box by providing the technology, the best in breed, third-party software too, pulling it all together, having that concierge team, having, that community, having those client introductions to allow that CPA to breathe and say, you know what, it's time for me to do what I have always wanted to do and have that autonomy and have that control in my practice and have that better quality of life so I can go home and be with my kids and read them that, bedtime book April 13th and not have to worry that they're, dropping the ball on something. And and potentially earn more money because they're working for themselves instead of, working for the partner and working for the client at the same time. So this, team that we've been able to build for our CPAs and tax advisors, we've taken that concept and put it into, well, what if you want to start your own practice? Where do you start and how do you do it?
And that's really good. And what about, so we're talking about I would call them the smaller firms, the one person to however big. What about the larger firms? Because they're at capacity. I mean,
Right.
we have, the top 25 here in Houston are all telling me like, I don't have enough staff. I'm at capacity. Clients are demanding more. How could Harness Wealth help them out as a large firm?
Yeah, I think with a lot of firms that are at a slightly larger scale than maybe someone who's starting out or one or two people working together on something, we serve teams of up to 20 folks, that are within a tax practice, and where I've seen them get the most lift out of what we provide is in two, call it 3 areas. One is technology itself. I think it's great to say technology, and that's, the panacea. Oh, technology is great. Yeah, sure it is. But like, what does it actually take off your plate? And I think the fact that our product and engineering team started from a consumer facing, a company basically, right? That we were building this for consumers. They have a consumer centricity to everything they design, which means that the client themselves is really informed of what's going on throughout the tax season and really informed about what their next steps are, to the point where there's less of those onesie twosie calls that come in from every client during busy season. And it's kind of a gruesome way to that, but it's death by 1,000
Right.
paper cuts, right? If you get a million of those calls, it's like that adds up to hours and hours and hours. So having the technology be really proactive in the communication that's going out to those folks, to let them know what's happening next, to let them know when to keep an eye out, to make sure that they feel kind of brought along through that, reduces those little paper cuts, those little things that add up to a really significant time outlay, right? So I think that's the first thing that we've seen with those bigger companies, because at a bigger scale, there's just more of those little calls and more of those little questions that come through. So having technology that's proactive in that way really helps. I think the second thing that's been super helpful is this concierge team that we work with provides operational support, right? So when it's renewals time and you're sending out engagement letters, figuring out who's on board for next tax season, all of that, like, our team works really closely with those larger firms to get all of those engagement letters put together, to get all of those out, to actually, start the invoicing process and follow up on those invoices. Right now, of course, every client hopefully is paying on time and all of that, but we live in the reality where that might not happen. So if there's a little nudge needed here or there, our team will work with the advisor to make sure that they're doing that, right? And at the end of the season, again, we're talking about, just like it's a game of inches, right? But it's like when it actually comes time for getting the e-file authorization and filing with the IRS, our operational team can do that on behalf of the CPA, of the advisor, of that team. So that, again, those minutes or seconds that it takes on every single client, that you're getting that back in your day, so that you can then focus that either on, as you put, Lena, of course, spending time with your family during the busiest time of the year, or growing the business if you're in that mode, right? Like whatever you want to spend that on, that's your prerogative. But our goal is to put that back in the day. I think the last thing that I'll just kind of mention along those lines as well is also thinking about how we can find contractors who are maybe looking to do some early tax prep work, or maybe tax prep and do a little review for other folks, folks who are maybe not trying to do full time or sign up like that, but especially during busy season. We will go through the process of vetting a pool of those folks and really interviewing them, making sure that they're really solid. And then have introductions essentially for those folks to the firms that we're working with. And I think some of our larger firms have really found that helpful, where, when suddenly, okay, this is ramping up, we got to go, we need to bring someone on to help us with some of this, that just having that group nearby and ready to tap into is super helpful, instead of needing to like open that search yourself. I mean, just think about, going on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever and sending out the job post. And that's, again, hours and minutes and hours that are taken out of somebody's day, where we're thinking about that. We're ahead of you. We got what you need. Like, that's kind of the mindset that we try to take with those sorts of firms, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes great sense. I know for invoicing, that's one of the things that I hear is like, oh, I need to do invoice. I need to do invoice. And I'm like, yeah, because you need cash in. I hate to tell you this, cash in to do payroll, but it does take time, and having that, I call it the back office folks helping out with that. That is another value proposition that these tax practitioners, and, even like in bookkeeping and consulting and all that, it's so important to have that, so that you can do what you are made for. And that is the one-on-one interaction with the clients on the hard press problems, and not those paper cut ones. Like, did you get my W-2? Did you get the 1099? Now what? It's like, and
listen,
we
I've
all
been on
know.
the other side where I'm like, I'm using some of this antiquated technology. I'm like, I have no idea if they have it or not. And I'm just going to go on God that they'll let me know if they don't, so I understand it from the consumer side of things. But at the same time, it's like, how annoying is that, having to answer that if you've, gone through like years of public accounting and have all this amazing knowledge about, actually how to advise clients through this very complicated process, and you're spending it answering like, oh, do I have, the W-2 in our Dropbox? Like, that's kind of silly, right? So, I think it's an interesting dynamic that's cropped up within the industry. And I think, there's been a lot of ink spilt over the burnout epidemic in across the profession. And I think at the end of the day, if we're trying to do anything, it's really trying to address that burnout epidemic, right? So how do we be better as an industry at providing CPAs with the technology, with the support, with the community? And I think that community is a big part of it too, right? Because I think a lot of burnout happens when you're kind of on your own, on your island, and not connecting with other people. But how do we create an environment that pushes back against what's happening from a burnout perspective, and really hopefully gets people kind of loving what they do again, right? And enjoying it, and being very successful in doing it. And if we can do that, I think it's a win-win for everybody, but win-win-win. You get the client feeling better about the experience, the advisor's doing well, and we're happy, obviously, providing that service.
Yeah, and you're right. It is a burnout. You have CPAs leaving the profession because they're just like, I can't do another tax season. I mean, the last 2 weeks of April is when people are like making a decision, like, am I coming back?
Yeah.
The last 2 weeks of October, am I coming back? And we hear a lot about streamlining, and that's what it sounds like you guys are helping do. And that's across the accounting profession. All professions need streamlining, but it's taking that time and to do the streamlining. That takes a lot of time of like, how can this be streamlined? And so you having that business out of a box, here's we've done all this research, you can save time. You're not directing them like to take one by one, but it's helping them make the decisions quicker. We talk about AI. Can be very beneficial, and but how do you use it? How do you make it the best use for yourself? And so I think what you guys are describing is how you've already done the research of how to make the best use of technology, AI, the people the relationships you already have to help these tax professionals, wealth professionals, everyone gain more momentum in their business, grow it, have better relationships with their current clients and future clients. I mean, to me, that is a win-win for the world.
Right. Absolutely. I will share one thing too, though, and it kind of struck me while you were saying that. Of course, I'm sure your listeners have noticed when I introduced myself and when Lena introduced herself, there wasn't CPA at the end of our names, right? And certainly, I've never prepared a return, and I think that's something true of a lot of our team over here. And when that is the case, I think it's important to share that the answers that we're coming with and that we're bringing, it's not coming out of our noggins, just like out of the clear blue sky. It's coming out of conversations with CPAs, with folks who are in the trenches, who are doing this all the time, and who maybe just like at the end of a season don't have the energy, even though they know what they would do or like what could help for the next season, just don't have the bandwidth or the energy or anything to be able to do that and actually go and execute on it. Like that's where we come in, right? Is like we want to listen to the folks that we're working with, and especially in these days of kind of building this company, it's like we want design partners to be working with, so that if somebody's coming in to be a client of ours as an advisor, I'm saying, right, if an advisor's coming on board, we're serving them certainly, but we're learning from them just as much as we're providing a service back. And I think that's the only way that you can build a company like this, is just listen to the advisors, to CPAs, to the folks that are working on this and in this every day, and actually feeling that pain when it's really getting down to the last days of busy season, and you're contemplating whether it's time to finally go into the acting profession or whatever it would be. That's not that's not being a CPA. Those are the moments that we actually want to be talking to folks and listening to them, so that we can build things that ideally will help lessen some of that pain in the future.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to give you each some few last words for our listeners and viewers. So whichever wants to go first.
Lena, you want to take it on?
Sure. Yeah. I just like to say that if you're, contemplating if now is the right time to break away and explore just owning your own practice and working for yourself versus working for the man, then I know it can feel scary. I talk to so many CPAs, tax advisors all the time that are that have always wanted to do it but just haven't known how. Leverage your network, leverage the people around you, and do as much research as you can. And also know that there are people out there that want to see you succeed, and that demand for your services is so much greater than the supply. And as long as you have the right partners in your corner, you can make it work.
Lovely. I think just echoing that, for the folks that are going to be maybe listening to this on April 16th, or as they're headed out to the beaches down in Mexico to kind of take a break after the busy season, if you are getting to the point where you feel like you need more capacity, or you're wondering about how to make sure that there's not another busy season like this busy season that you're coming out of, we'd love to talk to you. We'd love to understand kind of what you're facing right now and how we can help. I think we've had some really wonderful results with the folks that we have partnered with, who are feeling a lot better this time of year, and we'd love to provide that for others as well. So even if it's like just want to take a look at it and see what the technology looks like and understand a little bit more, we love chatting with folks, and it's no pressure or anything like that. So yeah, would love to connect with any of those folks. And again, you had said earlier, Kristie, like our information is going to be in the
Yes.
podcast. That's all that kind of stuff. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
so
I'm Nick at harnesswealth.com if anyone needs it. And
yeah, I will have your email, your phone number, your names,
Cool.
your LinkedIn link,
Nice.
LinkedIn info,
That works.
as part of the show notes for the video and the podcast. As always, anytime you hear a guest on here and you're like, "Ooh, I just don't know how to get to the show notes," or "I just don't want to, Kristie, just give it to me," you can reach out to me, because I am part of your virtual Rolodex. I am here to help connect you with Lena and Nick with anyone else I interview, or if it's a stranger and you want me to interview them, contact me that way too. We're building this virtual Rolodex one card at a time to help build that community of support for CPAs, but also for those of you who might be small business owners who are thinking about it. However it is, while we are TXCPA Houston, we are here to help build the relationships across the world. As you know, like my guests are from across the United States and now going international, because we are really a global commerce. So it's not just in Houston anymore. So I'm trying to broaden our own horizons. So thank you to both of you. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you to listening and viewing this. And I will see you next time. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Kristie.
Thanks, Kristie.